Hey everyone, it's Kristen, and I wanted to address the question about can you answer yes no questions using tarot cards? I see lots of comments on the internet and Facebook groups and things where, number one, people are saying you should just never ask a yes no question, and two, you absolutely can't answer yes no questions with tarot. I say phooey. Of course, you can answer yes no questions with tarot. You can answer virtually any kind of question using the tarot deck. To me, it's one of the most versatile forms of cartomancy that we have. Um, so I want to talk about that and how I use the tarot intuitively to answer yes no questions. And that's usually what the issue is, that if we're number one, about should you ask yes no questions to begin with, usually people will say that a yes no question is not empowering to the seeker. And one of the reasons why I don't change the seeker's question is because it is already part of the divine process. When the seeker has their question that they give to you, that is part of the divinatory process. For me to change it now shifts the whole vibration. And now I'm really answering my own question, not their question. So to me, it's important to word the question the way that the seeker has it worded. And I write it down so that I'll know exactly what they're asking. The key to your answer is often in the question. And so I do find that people don't take nearly as much time to address the question, to look at the question, to find out how, like what connection they can see between the cards that were chosen and the actual question. So we're going to kind of get into a little bit of that too really quickly. So that's how I feel about asking the questions. And then in terms of answering questions, yes, I think you can read tarot intuitively, and by that I mean I call it sometimes a story method of reading, or saying what you see. You can say what you see and still give a yes no response from that perspective. And I think that we do this all the time. Essentially what you're using is you're using your intuition to say what you see on the card, and then you're going to use your common sense to tell you whether this is answering a yes or whether it's answering no, based on the context of the question. And we do this really all the time in our lives. I don't know why we can't just apply it to tarot. So if somebody were to ask you, will we make it to the concert on time? And you know that the concert starts in 15 minutes and it's an hour's drive away, then I'm going to say no, you're not going to make it on time. You will probably still make it to the concert, but not on time. Hopefully you're not driving that fast. And so it's the same application when we see this happening in tarot. We're going to take what we see, we're going to take the question that we know, the details that we already understand, and we're going to put them together and make a decision based on what we see in the cards. So I want to take you through that process with 3 different questions, and hopefully this will give you a sense of how I answer yes/no questions with the tarot. So let's say you start with a question. I like this question all the time, is will I pass my exam? So you want to think about first the question. If somebody's asking, will I pass my exam, we can assume that that will be a happy occasion when they pass the exam. So you want to think first about what kind of cards would you expect to see if the answer to that question is yes. I would expect to see cards of happiness, joy, celebration, maybe relief, something like that. Okay, what would you expect to see if they don't pass their exam? I would expect to see cards showing sadness, defeat, being overwhelmed maybe, or something like that. So think about that first. Again, this is just common sense. You've all seen people who have passed exams and not passed exams. So what do they look like? So for example, I'm using the Delta Enduring Tarot. If we said, will I pass my exam, and we get the Mardi Gras card, I'm going to say yes. Hell yeah, you're going to pass your exam. You're going to go out and celebrate. too. Okay, everybody looks happy in this card. This is a card of celebration. So my answer would be yes. And, you know, you can add to it, you know, there would be some celebrating as well. Now, if you picked this card from the same deck, does this look like somebody has passed their exam or not passed their exam? To me, it looks like somebody has not passed their exam. And it's based on what you see in the card. So it's not based on what I see. I'm just telling you what I see. But when you read tarot, you're going to, when you read it intuitively, you're going to say what you see, not necessarily what anybody else sees. So to me, I see somebody who probably has not passed their exam. They may feel defeated. They may feel, you know, really sad about that experience. So I'm going to say no for this particular card. Now, you also have to pay attention to the question. I see people kind of using, you can use a system. For example, if you pick a card upright, it means yes. If you pick a card reverse, it means no. If you want to do a system, stick to the system. Don't intermix your system with this, because this is a little different. If you're reading intuitively like this, though, you have to pay attention to the question. There are positive questions and negative questions. Will I pass my exam is a positive question. What if the person had said, will I fail my exam? Well, now this is a negatively worded question. So the yes and no is going to be different, right? Will I fail my exam? No, it doesn't look like it. You're gonna, looks like you're having a great fun. You're gonna go out and party. Okay, so the yes and no depends on the question and the card chosen. Will I fail my exam? Possibly, yes. Okay, so this method requires you to really pay attention to the question, whether it's positively worded or negatively worded. Now, if you get this reading and you do this reading and you get this card, you can always do a follow-up reading. So when people say yes, no questions are disempowering, I say do the first reading for the seeker based on the question that they asked, how they asked it. Then you can always do a second reading, a follow-up reading, to give them guidance on how they can avoid this particular situation. I mean, that's what readings are really for. They're giving you information and guidance. So you can always pick another card or just do another reading. You can still read that card intuitively and give them some guidance on what action they need to take so that they can avoid failing the test. So that's one example with a question. Let's take another question. Let's say that the question is, will he call? So again, we want to think about the question. We may need to know some context for the question. So let's say in this case, the seeker went out with some guy and they really had a great time. They hit it off, and maybe they want to know, will this person call so they can go out again? So again, we want to think about what kinds of cards, what would we look for? You know, what are you thinking about? What comes to mind in terms of a yes answer? Will he call? Is that going to be a card showing excitement, fun, yay, happiness, joy? Or is it going to be a card of sadness, despondency, withdrawal, etc.? Okay, so in this case, we're going to be looking at, we're going to look for a card showing happiness. We might also look for, since, you know, this is one thing that's really important, this is a question where the subject is he. Will he call? So we may find a card that's just showing one person on it, and it's telling us what his actions are going to be. Okay, so for example, this is from the Dreaming Way Tarot. Let's say that we pulled this Eight of Pentacles card. We can see him busy at work. No, he's not going to call, at least within the next 30 days. I do like to put time frames on my readings. He's not going to call within the next week because he's busy at work. He's busy. Okay, so that might be one way that we would interpret. We also need to recognize that this is a relationship question. So often I see people asking relationship questions and the cards are only showing one person in the card. Well, that's not a relationship. So you need two people. You need to see two people in a card, right? So for example, if this card showed up, then I would at least see a connection between two people. And I would say, yes, he's going to call. And you also want to pay attention to the dynamic between the two people. In this case, they're connecting. You're making eye contact. It looks like they're sharing something. In another card, you may show two people with their backs turned to each other. So in that case, I would say he's not going to call, or even if he does call, there's a block between you. There's some separation between you. Okay? So think about it from that perspective. You also want to look at the question again, because we've got another thing in this question that could show up symbolically. The question is, will he call? The word call may show up visually in some way. And I see this happening a lot in readings. I see people overlooking these little cues. So for example, judgment card. I interpret the judgment card when it's got these horns, people blowing horns, as calling a phone call. Okay, so again, think about what the question is and how might that be depicted visually. So in this case, I would say, yes, he's going to call. Okay, now let's say that we have the same exact question, but the context of the reading is totally different. Maybe you went out with someone and you don't want them to call anymore. You're tired of them. They're harassing you now. It's annoying. So will he call could still be the question, but the context is different. The yes, no response would be different. Will he call? Like, is he going to keep calling me? Is he going to keep harassing me? If the answer is no, then we'd look for happy, positive, confident kind of cards. If the answer is yes, then we're looking for cards that are showing headache or aggravation. Okay. So in that case, will he call? Like, is he going to keep calling me? And let's say that we got strength from the same deck. To me, what I see is someone who's confident. They've also shut their eyes. You can see in this picture, which to me shows ignoring something. So I would say even if this person does call you, it looks like you're over it. You're going to be ignoring them. You're just going to kind of move on confidently. But if we see, for example, the Nine of Swords show up, will he call? And we're talking about, like, will this guy keep calling me? Is he going to keep harassing me? It looks like yes, because now we see a depiction of somebody who's really stressed out. And we can also see that she's covering her ears. Okay, so when we talk about call, again, we want to look at that question and see, are there any visual depictions in the card that relate back to that question? So calling and not wanting to hear something. So it looks like, yes, he's still going to be calling. You're still going to be covering your ears because you don't want to hear the phone. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense with those two examples. And I want to do one more example. And this one is, let's say someone is in desperate need of a financial boost. They're down to their last dime and they really need some money. So their question is, will I get the money soon? In this case, we have the subject is about money, but we also have a timing issue with soon. And whenever I see something like soon, I like to put, again, a time frame on it. Is soon a week? Is soon 30 days? You know, we need to know how to define soon. So usually I'll just put a time frame on the reading. But when we want to answer that reading, we want to look at some different cards. So will I get the money soon? Again, this would be, when we think about a yes or no, I would think that Um, Getting the money soon would be showing up in terms of a really positive card, maybe a card that shows a sense of, I'm trying to find the card that I'm thinking about right here, like the Three of Cups, a card of victory. And then if it were a no, I would think it would be a card that shows kind of like despondency and pressure and feeling, under a lot of pressure. So I'm going to show you really quickly. Let's just use this one. So let's say the question is, will I get the money soon? And you get the Ten of Cups show up. Now, one of the things that people often have trouble with is the emblems, the suit emblems. In this case, we have cups, but we've asked a question that's about money. So how do you, interpret, like we think of maybe the money connected to a Pentacles card, and a Pentacles card doesn't come up. So how do we interpret this? Again, using that intuitive way of reading, we just want to look at this card and say, do these people look happy? Are they celebrating? So I would say, yes, you're going to get the money soon, because this is a card really of celebration and happiness and joy. Okay. If, on the other hand, you receive this card, the Five of Cups, that looks like a card that would say you're not going to get the money soon. There looks like there's sadness, despondency in this particular card. What about, I didn't really mean for all these to be cups. Let's pick something else. What about if we picked the Eight of Swords? Will you get the money soon? Just looking at this card, does it look like somebody is like, yay, we're rescued, we're safe, we've got the money that we need? It doesn't. Okay, it doesn't. Another thing that I use is body language. So if one of the key elements of this question is the timing of soon. So how do you read timing? Sometimes you don't have to read it as like a specific day or, date or 3 weeks or anything like that. You can look at the body language. Whenever I see the Magician, just that pointing, the up and down pointing, it makes me think now, immediately. So to me, I would read this as, yes, you're going to get the money immediately. It's coming in very soon. What if you get the Seven of Pentacles? And to the question, will I get the money soon? In this case, I would say you are probably going to get the money, but it's not going to come soon. This is a card of waiting. We can see all of the money still on the vine. I might also say there might be like a little money that comes in early, but it doesn't seem like it's enough to take your attention or focus away from the rest of the money. So yes, you're going to get the money, but it doesn't look like it's going to come in soon. And so that's just kind of the way that I look at tarot in terms of answering yes/no questions. And I think if you apply this same format to your cards, you can do the same thing. Find a deck that you can interpret intuitively, which again is like a story method or just saying what you see. It should be a deck where you can see characters doing actions, doing things. And those decks are a lot easier to use in that manner. And then again, think about first, what would a yes response look like visually, and what would a no response look like visually? And then when you shuffle and you choose your card, I think it'll be much easier for you to figure out whether that is a yes or no response.